Welcome to the Modern Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Giordani. I have a special guest today, Manny Moreno with Got Fixers. We've actually kind of been in the same circle for quite some time. I met you for the first time at actually an event with Andrew Greer, and I instantly connected with you because you were talking about quotes in a book, and it was very inspirational. So I started following your journey. You've kind of made some movements within the flipping game, and you have an Airbnb, which I'm excited to talk about those numbers because I know last year you pulled six figures on an ADU Airbnb, which is awesome. So I'm sure we'll get into a lot of cool stuff today and provide a ton of value for people who are listening.
Absolutely. Well, one, thank you so much for having me. Honored. And yeah, I think one thing going back to when we first connected, it's been really cool to follow your journey too. And it's crazy how powerful social media is, because that's where I really started following you. You became very familiar, and I just love that you're putting out positive content. You also read and just love the whole mindset growth and, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. So I'm excited to dive in and
100%,
see what we can come up with today.
Absolutely. So talk to me about your journey of getting started in real estate. Let's get to like the nitty-gritty first.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So I was just leading, like I told you before we got started here. We started a book club with Porchlight Realty and the Got Fixers team. And the book we're reading is Exactly What to Say by Phil Jones. And I kind of mentioned my origins of my story because today was our first book club meeting. And someone asked me, how did you get into sales? You seem to know what to say when someone asks you a question really well, or you can quote books really well. And, well, the truth is, actually, my background was a nonprofit industry for 10 years. So I had no sales background, no real estate background whatsoever.
I love that.
But being in the nonprofit industry, living in San Diego, I was about to be the client that I was serving, which was people experiencing homelessness, because working in a nonprofit in San Diego, I wasn't making very much, and the cost of living kept increasing, as a lot of us know here in San Diego.
Right.
So I knew I needed to make a shift. And I didn't know what that next step was. All I knew is that my current situation wasn't going to get me where I wanted to go.
Right.
And so, the one thing I knew, one of my favorite quotes is, if you don't have mentors, the great place to start is a bookshelf. So that's where I went to the bookshelf. Before sales and real estate too, I was a chronic broke person. I just was broke. Couldn't figure out a way to save money or make more money. And so I was like, enough's enough. I was sick and tired of it. So I bought 6 financial literacy books, one of them being Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Money Mastery, The Game by Tony Robbins, which is a fat book, probably the biggest book I've ever read, but I devoured it. And because, again, I wanted to so badly break the cycle and pattern. And when you read those 6 financial literacy books, obviously Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I saw a common pattern. That most of these wealthy people or people who had money had their hands in real estate. So success leaves clues. So then I started reading books about real estate. I got into the Bigger Pockets podcast over 3 years ago and became obsessed. It made the most sense to me. So then I decided I'm going to get into real estate. And I had no sales background, no real estate background. But I found out in college that the fastest way to learn something is to fully immerse yourself in that environment. So I was like, I need to immerse myself with other real estate investors, and so I can learn. And so I started just looking for jobs that would hire me with no real estate license, no sales background, and kind of interviewed a few places. As I think you know my background, I ended up being with Gigi Homes, and I just started as a cold caller. Started from the very bottom, so to speak. Yeah. And then that's how I got into it. And then just learned from, some of the best. Started going to many events, networking events, and learning everything I could about real estate investing. Got my license 6 months later, did really well my first year, was able to take that success and then buy my first duplex here in San Diego and house hack it. So Airbnb in the front unit and then live in the back unit with a roommate. And I was very fortunate to be, I knew it would do well. I just didn't think it would do that well. Right. I was very blessed. And my very first investment property, I was getting paid to live here in San Diego through the house hacking strategy. So that's kind of a little bit about my origins and how I got to where I am today.
I love that. Did you, and this may be a tough question, did you grow up like in poverty? Like, was there anyone that in your family or anyone who was super successful that you had to look up to, or were you looking to maybe break that pattern?
Yeah, good question. Gives me the goosebumps.
Yeah.
No, I didn't have anybody who had financial success. Like, I think a lot of people don't know this, but my parents did the best they could in first generation.
Sure.
And my parents always struggled financially to the point where where I grew up, I was born in an apartment. I wasn't born in an apartment, but I grew up in an apartment with my family. And then they could never figure out their finances. So we ended up moving in with my grandma in her home. And, and for whatever reason, they just were always paycheck to paycheck, always struggling. Like, Christmases were awkward. Everybody around me had, nicer things. And, unfortunately, I kind of fell within that pattern. And just until I was, maybe 3 years ago was until I finally learned about financial literacy and then started being surrounded by wealth. So to answer your question, no, I never had that. And that was I was very fortunate that I was curious enough to seek understanding through books to break that pattern. And ultimately now what fuels me, a lot of where my motivation comes from, just wanting to provide a better future for my future self and my future family is what has me constantly seeking understanding and growth.
Right. I asked that question. I know it's like a tough question, but I was raised by a single mother. She was a teacher, so never made a ton of money. So now, I'm in a position to where I can inspire my family to do more. And so I'm sure, like, I see a lot of very successful people who don't come from money, but you can almost tell when they don't. And someone like you're very inspiring. You're always out doing things. You're always very motivated. You enjoy to inspire other people. And so I can tell there was something deeper that was behind the curtains that definitely people, when they're listening to podcasts and watching people, they can look at them and think that they maybe come from money or how they got a start and what they're doing or why they're successfmay. And I think a big part of that is your upbringing in your childhood and a lot of that. And I try to touch on that as much as I can. Sometimes the questions may be a little harsh. But
no, I love it. I welcome it. Please. Yeah. I love going deeper. One of my favorite mentors, Trigger Strasberg, she's the founder of Humble Design, actually moved me here. And she said this in a podcast once, and I relate to her. She's like, I hate surface level conversations. Yeah. And I agree, because I think there's underneath the surface, there's that really meaning or what moves people. And I'm always so curious about that because, like you said, there's something underneath this that's really moving us to go in a certain direction. And it's cool that you're going there. Yeah. Because I think that's where people can connect and relate to each other. So, yeah, I love that you did that. You said something, too, like, that I'm blanking on it now, but I'm sure it'll come back. But, yeah, I love when, like, don't hold back. I'm curious what other questions you got.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned that you're trying to break the cycle. Did you feel, it's funny, obviously being very consistent with content and things like that, you get a lot of these people who are very harsh when it comes to people who own real estate or landlords or investors, and they have the victim mentality of you guys investing in real estate are making it unaffordable for the average American to buy a house. Did you ever feel like you had the victim mentality, like as you were like kind of steadily going up, or blaming other people like for your situation? Like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I love this question. Yes. Yeah. It's interesting. Most people see me as, not remember what I was going to say, but most people see me as who I am now. This positive person, and people always, it's funny, even someone yesterday in my office is like, Manny, I can't imagine you being like upset, angry, or sad. And the reality is I experience all those emotions. I have my ups and lows like any human. And, but to answer your question, then, yeah, growing up in the past, I was very opposite. I come from a very tough background, like being in the Mexican culture, especially growing up in like East LA, kind of grew up with gangs and that machismo culture where I had to be tough. I had to be, I had to prove myself, and, there's a lot going on, and we don't have to dive in too much into that, but with that too, I was very like opposite. I was very reactive. I was very emotional. I was very, angry, hurt kid growing up. And, with that, was all the negative that comes with that. And then the victim mindset, like, why me, you know, why was I dealt this card? And it wasn't until, I would say, high school when I actually joined cross country, and I had this, there's always somebody in your life that comes in and kind of like reshapes you or redirects you. And for me, it was my cross country coach.
I love that.
Mr. Elliott, never forget him. And I was just this bully of a kid, believe it or not, and very like, you know, what's the word, rebellious. And then I just, for whatever reason, I remember just saying like to him, like, I'm going to quit. I'm never coming back. He's like, go. He's like, I don't care. We don't need your attitude around here. For whatever reason, it was like reverse psychology.
Right.
The fact that he told me that quit, go,
right,
made me be like, almost rebellious. I wanted to stay on the team now, right, and prove that I can be there. And so I ended up staying on the team and pursuing it. And people asked, like, kind of what was a pivotal moment. And it was actually the cross-country team because, again, I come from the people I was hanging out with. It was like the quote-unquote popular people, the jocks or the gangs. It was all about being tough and machismo.
Right.
But the cross-country kids are, like, very studious, very quote-unquote, like, the nerdy type.
Right. And
I remember one day doing interval trainings, and I was nothing but rude to these kids. But I remember vividly the time where we were doing these intervals, and they were cheering me on, like, go, Manny, go, Manny. I'm like, why are these people cheering me on when I've been nothing but rude to them?
Right.
Why are these people, like, helping me when I've been nothing but neglectful, so to speak? And I kind of had that Grinch moment. You guys remember Grinch, the movie, where like his heart's growing, it's awkward, he doesn't know that feeling. I had that feeling as well. And that's when everything changed. I'm like, wow, like, why am I spending time with these people when I feel like they don't have my back? And it's just like the moment I need them, they're not there.
Sure.
But then there's these kids in community that, despite how I treat them, they have my back and they're there for me. Like, whoa, that's weird. Like, and that's when I realized I want more of that instead of that. And I started spending more time with them. And it was funny because over here is all about being tough and cool.
Right.
With hanging out with, and this could go dive into a whole other topic, but the environment is so important. What was cool over here was having good grades, and what was not cool was having shitty grades. And it wasn't until my junior year in high school, because I started hanging out with them, I didn't want to be uncool and not have good grades.
Right.
I started trying harder in school. That these cross-country kids would tutor me in math. They would help me with my grades. And I got my first straight A's ever in junior year in high school, and I ended up making up 2 years of high school. My last 2 years, most people don't know this, but I went to Saturday school. I had to go to adult school to make up my credits to be able to get into a 4-year college, which I barely made it into. But so to answer your question, yes, I went through all that. And what changed was that coach, and then ultimately my environment, being surrounded by better kids to this day. I'm grateful for them. And that's kind of how I kind of got out of that victim mindset.
I love that. I feel like what you said with environment is one of those things where it's like seasons. I always say seasons of life. As we're continuing to get older and older, we're still kind of doing similar things as what high school was, but just involving in different ways, right? Like, I'm sure you and I, we like to surround ourselves with people who are doing more, doing better, good people, right? And you can use those same experiences when you were younger as like, oh, that pivotal moment, but you're still making strides towards the same moments as you continue to get older, which is funny.
What would you say? I'm curious on that note.
Yeah.
Like, because obviously even you've had a lot of success and growth. What were some like pivotal like environment shifts that helped you get to the next level? Like, for example, maybe when you first started, and I think a lot of people probably listening to this want to know, like, how can I elevate or how can I get to the next point? Like, I guess for you, like, what few key people or environments helped you go from where you were to the next level? So
there's multiple people who have helped in different seasons of my life. So when I was 18, I share this story, and I'm gonna share it in maybe a different way. Something happened when I was working at T-Mobile at the time at a mall. Kind of at the time, dead-end job. It was good money for me at an 18 years old. Something happened. My dad and I were becoming closer and closer. We didn't have a super tight relationship when I was younger. And he offered for me to move out to Palm Springs to go get my real estate license. So I packed up my stuff same day. I moved to Palm Springs, got my real estate license, was out there for 12 months, sold a few houses, packed up enough money, came back to San Diego because this is where I was born and raised. and started doing real estate full time in 2009. And then there was a next season of life where I got into title insurance in 2017, and the person who recruited me is my best friend. He was my best man in my wedding. That was a season of my life. And then when I started flipping, Marcel, who you know, we connected, and he offered me equity interest in deals that I brought him, because at the time I didn't have enough money to invest in deals. That was life changing, because now I can invest and I can do my own deals, and I can do more of now what I like, and ultimately eventually. I haven't shared this with anyone, and this can't be clipped. So if you're listening to the podcast, you can tell me on the side. But I officially am retiring from title. Start of this year, so I'm waving myself out, but I wouldn't have been able to do that without having flipping be full time and find something that was a massive passion. So I think there's always different seasons of life where you have those pivotal moments that can change your trajectory. And now I love doing things like this to meet people like you and other people who inspire me in different ways. And it's just, I couldn't imagine. And sometimes, going back to like childhood stuff, like thinking that I don't know that I deserve the success that I have now, but now I feel it in myself to make my acquisitions team money and all of that. Cause at the point where I'm at, it's like only so much money that you can make that where it's like, it doesn't change my life in any way, shape or form at this point. But now I can change their life.
Right.
Which is awesome.
And you said two great things. First of all, that's amazing. And I think like what stood out to me is relationships. It's like relationships are so important. And I tell people too, like I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for the relationships that I cultivated.
Right.
Some that I feel like were undeserving, but I think there's people in our lives, like maybe your best friend who recruited you, who saw something in you that we didn't see in ourselves. And like we need people in our lives to show us that there's higher branches to reach for. And I'm grateful for those people, because those people, I think, are very unconditional, and they believe in you probably when you don't see it or when you don't believe in yourself.
100%.
We need those people. But then I think there's relationships that we can take credit for as well, that like, hey, we saw this person, they have a skill or something that I don't have that I need to complete the puzzle to get us to the next level.
Right.
And I think it's like being very mindful of the relationships you're cultivating, but also like being very open-minded to when and have an open heart when someone is like sees something in you to be coachable. And it's really cool that you were able to like kind of cultivate both, because I think a lot of people don't talk about that. But yeah, that's just really cool. You just made me think of that as you were talking.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think really quickly, but yeah, relationships. Like for those that are listening, whatever it is you want to do, I think too is like it's really important who you seek counsel from, and like just make sure they're doing what you want to be doing, that they align with your values or the kind of like the life you want to create, and then go work for them.
Right.
Like that's what I did. Like I didn't know a lot of these things, but I aligned myself or surrounded myself with people who did, who had similar lifestyles that I wanted or values, and then maybe at some point you're going to outgrow them, because as you get to know them more, maybe the values aren't aligned.
Sure.
And then you just need to move on. So there's always going to be this like, growth. Like you said, every seasons for maybe people. And it's hard sometimes because you wish these people would stay in your life forever, but then you learn something about them. They're like, oh, but anyhow, you just got to keep finding people.
And there is still a way, I think, to stay aligned with those people, just in maybe a different way. Right. It was funny you mentioned like seeing something in me with the guy who recruited me. Last night my wife said something that kind of caught me off guard, because I was like, this doesn't make sense. But she's like, you have so much potential. She told me that. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? I was like, in my eyes, like so much potential means that I'm not at where I'm at in my current life, maybe financially and all of that. And I was kind of caught off guard. And then I started thinking about it this morning, and I was like, okay, so where I'm at now, she still sees more potential in where I'm at. And so I had to like digest it in a different way. Because at first I was kind of offended by it. And then afterwards I was like, wait, that means that I just have more to give and more that's available in terms of capacity, which was an interesting way, because at first I was like, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What are you saying? Like, we make a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
We do very well. And it's, but it's weird to hear that, but then you have to gain perspective of like why that is.
Right, and I think you hit the nail on the head even earlier when you said that you can only have so much success before it becomes like meh, like materialistic wise. And I think like the greater purpose is how do we make an impact?
Sure.
More of an impact. So it's just really cool how even your wife was like, yes, because right away I think as men we go straight to material success, wealth, money,
Machismo,
all that stuff. But it's really cool that we have other people to remind us, like, hey, there's more important things in life than just material and money success. And I think one thing, too, that I really resonate with you and what you said, even in previous conversations, is like, now that we have a certain level of success, it's like, okay, I've been able to accomplish a lot of my dreams, goals, and wants. How do we now help other people get what they want?
Right.
How do we help them? And I think one of the ultimate, and maybe you feel similar, but I think once you get to a certain level, you have so much gratitude, and I feel like the only way to express gratitude at some point is to give back and to help people experience something similar.
Right.
So, like, for those who, like, my people always ask me, like, why are you Mr. Bueno Bueno on Instagram? And because my personal brand, which I haven't really shared a lot about, is Bueno Bueno. And for those who don't know, it means good, good. And Bueno Bueno is Spanish. And it's all about sharing that good energy and insights to help other people have similar breakthroughs in their lives. I've had a lot of people share a lot of insights, or I read a lot into personal development, kind of what you're doing with the podcast and your platform. But I ultimately just want to be able to share and help people have similar breakthroughs in their lives, like kind of like what you're doing now.
Sure.
And that's my goal. Like for our team, our acquisitions team, my dream would be able to help all of them get their first or second investment property, whatever that means to them, because I know how much it's changed my life. And people helped me get my first one. I would, and that's another thing too, if I can just share one thing going back to kind of like the whole trajectory, is like, I didn't do any of this alone.
Sure.
It took a tribe, a people, a community, and I think, I forget who said it, but like, yeah, nothing great is accomplished alone. It's accomplished with people and a community. And yeah, if I can just, and again, this goes back to my culture, I thought I had to do it alone. For a long time, I had to prove it to myself, prove it to everybody. But I think the moment I began better at receiving help and asking for help, and also just collaborating with other people, my trajectory changed. So yeah, I think if those that are listening, like, ask for help, find people, and I think successful people like you too, like I see it even just with what you're saying, it's like we want to help people.
Yeah.
And I think true successful people actually want to help other people succeed. The people who are selfish and keeping things close to their heart they may be quote unquote successful in riches and materialistic and money, but their soul is probably not that rich and they're all that. But like successful, well-rounded, successful people who are happy, joyful, fulfilled, I think naturally they want to give and help other people as well.
Totally. And I do think it's hard for some of the people that may be like closed off. Because I agree with you. There is a lot of people like that I know who are very closed off. Because for me, like obviously when we hung out the other day for an hour, we literally talked the whole time, and I'm open book. I share everything, and sometimes to my detriment. And some people can take advantage of sharing too much, which then you become more protective and more quiet. And so maybe you are rich in terms of materialistic things or in some type of monetary thing, but then you've gotten to maybe taken advantage of in the past, and maybe you're too open with people that took advantage of that. So I could see it both ways, where people become protected of their self, because there's only so much you can give until you feel like you're being taken advantage of. Which I did have those feelings last year a little bit. There were certain people who were around me who were seeing success, and I wanted to help as much as I possibly can, but to a certain extent, it's like when someone's not doing what I'm telling them exactly what to do to become what they need to become, it becomes hard, because then it's like the boy who cried wolf, where they're just asking, and not doing anything.
And you bring up a good point, and 100%, I agree with that. It reminds you of two people. Darren Hardy, he's a like business coach, entrepreneur. he was one of the first courses I ever paid for, like expensive. At the time, I was broke, and I paid $2,000 for his course, Insane Productivity. Highly recommend it. But he talks about it, he's like, I'm in the business of helping people who want help. There's a lot of people who like, you got to want to grow.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who say they want to grow, but then they don't actually do it, or they're not coachable.
Right.
And then you remind me the second part, and I forget who said this, so I can't take credit, but like mentors love implementers. So like, you know, if you really want to be more coach and you want successful people to pour into you, they get gratification, fulfillment when they see you implementing what they just shared, and then them seeing you either make mistakes or fail, but ultimately when you get the results by you implementing what they said, and then you know, that's incredible. So, you know, I agree with you. You got to discern the people who are the time wasters and then the people who are actually hungry and going to implement and do the things you coach them on. And it's just, it takes time because that could become exhausting.
And I think coachability is one of the most underrated traits that someone can have. Being coachable and being able to implement very quickly. Like if you hired, let's say, a real estate coach or a success coach, wherever, like the listeners, wherever you are at in your business, if you hire a coach and they're telling you exactly what to do and they have the framework for you to be successful, implement it because it will change your life. And I think people not being coachable and second guessing what people. So I shared with you, I'm a part of a coaching program, and there's a Facebook group, and there's this one guy who always asks, and I'm saying this because not all questions are dumb, so I don't want people to think that like me saying this, it's a bad thing to ask questions. But this guy asks questions that are very dumb, and maybe they're not dumb, but he continues to overthink the business constantly instead of just doing the things that they're telling you to do. And there's a reason he's not successful. There's a reason he had to, you know, get out of coaching because he didn't close a deal in 6 months. And all of that is because he wasn't coachable. And sometimes you just need to get out of your own way, right? If you're in that frame of mind of where you're constantly second guessing things or you're asking too many questions, there's a point to where it's like you got to stop asking the questions and you got to start doing the thing, or else you're never going to get to the point where you want to get to. And I think that's really, it can be challenging for some people.
Right. I love that. It's so funny that you say that because one, I have a theory that everybody has a certain threshold of understanding before they take action. They got to have X amount of information or understanding before they take action. But I think about this too, and I fall in the category where I need more information and more understanding before I make decisions, almost to a fault. I've gotten a lot better. And then I have to give a shout out to Mark Patterson because Mark Patterson is such a doer, and working with him, it's been incredible. Like
he's the opposite.
He's the opposite.
Yeah,
this guy just takes action and then just, and you have to. I think as a owner or a business owner or CEO, a great quality or what makes them super successful is to be able to make quick decisions.
Right.
You know, great decisions quickly.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I'm very grateful that I've gotten a lot better. But even he will coach me out and call me up on those situations where he's like, do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Don't overthink it. And then so anyhow, 100% agree with you. The best leaders make quick decisions and decisions quickly and swiftly. And then you learn from it. I don't think there's such thing as failures.
No.
There's only feedback. So when you make a decision, it either works or it doesn't, but now you have feedback to make a better decision.
It's an educational moment. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think for the moment I learned that as well, it's now I love making decisions because I get the instant feedback. Okay,
Right.
Did it work? Did it not work? But I won't know that feedback until I make the decision.
Right.
And if you make a mistake or it doesn't go your way, just have enough humility to admit it was a mistake and then move on. People are going to be graceful. As long as the intention is to move the needle forward or make progress or make growth or make an impact and it's something good, people are going to forgive you. People are going to give you grace. And also, two things. People can't relate to perfect people. We could only relate to imperfect people. So even as a leader or a business owner, if you make decisions and make mistakes, that's actually, and then you admit it, and like people can relate to that.
Right.
And people, I think we need to see more of that too, because I think sometimes people get intimidated because they see successful people and it looks like they got it all figured out. Like they never make bad decisions. When in reality, we do it all day, every day. And we just usually don't see it on social media. We don't talk about it. And then, gosh, you said something else, and that was a good point about decisions. But I'll come back to me. Yeah, so like, got to make quick decisions. Any decision is better than no decision. And it's so interesting, too, because, like, no decision is actually a decision. Like, not making a decision is a decision.
Yeah.
You're choosing. Oh, that was my other thing. And one of my favorite people, he's actually a pastor, Erwin McManus, but he's also an author, a thought leader. He teaches on communication. And I love what he said in a podcast. He's like, overthinking, like you said, gets in the way of people making decisions and gets in the way of people making progress or achieving the things they want in life. And I love what he says. And you really, really think about, like, what is overthinking? Like, overthinking, it's interesting. We only overthink negative consequences, but we never overthink positive consequences. So it's just so fascinating to me that overthinking is just repeating these possible negative consequences that are fantasies. They're not even real until we make a decision and see if it's true or not. But we never overthink about positive consequences or results. So it's just an interesting thought that we spend so much time on that when in reality, like, why don't we, or like, worst case scenario. I think it's important as a leader to think about worst case scenario and then ask yourself, if that happens, can we handle it? You know, if this happens, will I die? No? Okay. Then you can handle it and you're going to be okay after.
Right.
And I think naturally our minds go there because we're survival creatures. We're always survival. But we have to recondition ourselves. Like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, what is possible? You know, just imagine, or could it be possible that X, Y, and Z? Like the positive thing.
Right.
It's a lot harder to think about the positive outcomes because it's a little bit more unnatural. And be like, what is possible? Could it be possible? What happens if we actually succeed?
Sure.
Why don't we spend more time in that area instead of being so often negative, so to speak?
Yeah. It's funny you bring up that point, and I'm going to ask this question because it's related to both of us with when it comes to real estate investing and flipping. Do you look, like when you're doing your pro forma, do you look at best case scenario or worst case scenario right off the bat?
Naturally, worst case scenario.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, friends outside of the industry, they're like, "Oh, like, damn, you're gonna make that much or whatever." Like, if I've sent them my performer before, and they'll like pretend to run numbers on deals because, you know, occasionally I'll be like, "Yeah, if you ever, you know, have a realtor who has a deal, you know, run numbers on it." And I'm kind of curious what you think. He's like, "Oh man, we'll make like 90 grand on this," and I think the opposite. I'm like, "Well, we can probably also lose because this, and this." So it's funny because I don't look at like profit first, which I think there's a book on profit first. I think that's what it's called. But I look at worst case scenario first, and then if we exceed that, great.
And you touched a good point too. And like, this is why I love Annie Frisella. For those who don't know, I listen to a lot of podcasts. But it's like, I think one thing, it's neither good to be too negative. It's neither good to be too positive. But I think we're like, it's a spectrum. And I think where we should all sit is reality.
Right.
Like we should accept reality for what it is. And I think most often we, as humans, tend to either just add a lot of negativity to something or add too much positivity to something. And I think a healthy place is just to be like reality, especially when you're specifically flips. Like, what is reality? Like, I think it's just so interesting how people come up with ARVs or maybe like, oh, but we could. But that's where people get hurt. But like, what we could, potentially we could make more. And I think you just got to look at both, but ultimately, like, what would it sell for today? What is the reality today of what this property would sell like? And then base your numbers off that. And then it's good to know worst case scenario, so if it happens. And I think ultimately, too, it's good to have multiple exit strategies.
Absolutely.
So if we can't sell it for X amount, what are we going to do with this? Long-term rental or short-term rental? And then have multiple exit strategies.
Right.
So that's how we overcome worst case scenarios. It's just about going through all the potential exit strategies. So you know, worst case scenario happens. Again, we're not going to die, and we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one thing. Being speculative will definitely hurt you. And I think people who are outside of our space who want to flip their first house or buy an investment property, they always look at best case and it's always more speculative than it is reality.
Right.
And I think it's important to just have that mind frame going in, and especially people who are getting started too, they can afford to lose money. Like, I don't want to lose money, but like, it's my money. And if I'm wrong on a deal, I will take it and move on and make up for it on the next one, or whatever it is. We're doing enough volume to where it's like, it will minus out, but still you can't, go into it speculating that it's going to be, you're going to have appreciation, or market's going to go up, or it's going to sell over asking price over a last comp. It's interesting.
Yeah. And then one thing we remind ourselves, and it's like, one of our rules of thumb is we're never going to force a deal. Like, we're not going to force a deal just to get a deal. We got to make sure it's a good deal. Like, it meets our criteria. We have criteria for a reason. So if it's within our criteria, it's like values. It's a decision.
100%.
You got to think about your criteria in investing, like your values, your personal values. If it aligns with these values, it's a yes. If it doesn't contribute or serve these values, or it's not aligned, then it's a no. And that's why it's so important to have values, so you can say no to things that aren't aligned with you. But it's so crazy how so many people don't know who they are, what their values are, or going back to investment, their criteria. So Brandon Turner talks about this in Bigger Pockets, but like, you got to have a crystal clear criteria. So again, it just helps you make decisions. It keeps you safe. So if you have your crystal clear criteria, if it's within it, then it's a yes. You should feel good about moving forward. If it doesn't meet your criteria, then it's a no. But like, I think where people get hurt, again, it's like, they try to force it. It's not in my criteria, but maybe I can make it work, or maybe, I'll try it. And it's okay. I hope that makes sense, but I think that's where, like, that's one way to help mitigate wrong choices, bad decisions.
And I'll give an example to that. Because I think I can give an example to that, because it's your thoughts. But yesterday we have this deal, and I knew off the jump, the guy, it was tenant occupied. The seller was close with the tenant. I don't know if it was an ex-boyfriend or whatever it is. I could just tell that there was going to be something with this tenant. So he was kind of involved in the transaction in a sense, like constantly giving advice. They were always together on the phone. Right off the jump, I could just tell. This guy was very rude to my acquisition girl, Madison. Very obnoxious, very much an asshole, like the whole time. And we're just trying to buy the place. Like, we're not trying to like make things complicated here. And so we got under contract. And I went to go walk the place, and we have to ask questions, right? When we're going to walk a house, like, we have to ask questions. There's just standing in the ceiling. So I asked, like, what's going on here? And he's like, what does it fucking matter? Do you want to buy it or do you not want to buy it? And I'm like, okay. So I took a step back, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Did I, do anything? Like, I think we're getting off the wrong foot here. I just have to ask questions to know what's going on. If there's a roof leak, I need to know about it. If there's, if something's missing or something's broken, I just need to be aware. And so it was just pulling teeth the whole time on the appointment. So then he follows me out, and it's in a condo complex. So I park where there was available parking around the corner, but I wasn't in front of the condo, so he didn't see it. So this was on Monday, and yesterday he calls escrow, yelling at them. And this is the second time he's done that to escrow. And so I call the seller right away, because he's not a party to the transaction. He's not even on title. There's nothing to do with it. And so I call the seller right away, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna send over a cancellation. I don't appreciate him calling my escrow officers, yelling them. I don't appreciate him treating me like shit when I was walking the house. We're just here to try to buy the house. This is a business deal. And I'm trying to be cool and cordial, but I go off vibe, and this doesn't align with me. And, I'd be hesitant if he's not going to move out of the place. I don't know what the situation is. I don't know what the relationship is, but I'm not okay with this. And she's begging me to stay in the transaction. And I'm like, look, I don't even want to move forward at the price that we're at either. I mean, that's another caveat to it, is something came up way under where I thought I could sell for. So we're like almost $100,000 off. So I'm like, here's where I'm at. It was $90,000 below where we're at. I'm like, here's where we're at. I'm happy to move forward, but I don't want this guy to call escrow. I don't want him to call me. I don't want him to bother anyone. Like, I want this to be a done deal, and he needs to move out of the house right away. And she's like, fine, no worries. 30 minutes later, he calls me and threatens to kill me.
Wow.
Yelling at me, basically calling me broke, that I walked to his house or I took a taxi to the house because I parked around the corner. I'm like, bro, like, I didn't say this, but like, I'm driving a Porsche, you know, and I was wearing an expensive watch. I'm like, my watch is 50 grand. Like, I'm not walking or taking a taxi to your house. And he just like continues to yell at me. And finally, I was like, why? Like, my wife was looking at me. She's like, why are you on the phone? Just hang up. So I hung up. I blocked his number. I literally sent the cancellation to escrow. I'm like, this just does not fit in my value. I don't need to go. I mean, it was probably, let's say, a $40,000 or $50,000 projected profit deal. But like, I don't need to make that money over a headache to deal with a person like this. Whether or not it could have been over the hump and dealt with, but like, to me, something else, there's just something that could come back at you, or like, you just don't feel good about it, right? And I honestly, with a lot of times, whenever we're buying houses, if the vibe is off, I would rather just pass on it, because something like weird like the earth is just gonna like, I'm gonna run into like foundation issues or something that I didn't see, that I'm gonna lose money on it for whatever reason. So I hope that kind of hits the point. It was a long story, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of really, like, again, I always like to go like deeper. Like, if it costs your peace, it's too expensive.
It's too expensive, yeah. So
like, and then I think, and an added layer to that too, it's like, you have standards.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to have higher standards. And I think that's where I think a lot of young investors, and I was guilty of this myself when I first got into real estate, we want our first deal so badly. We want our first check so badly, our commission check. So we will take anybody who says they want to work with us, even people who are rude, mean, that are not aligned with us, all those things. But then there comes to a point too where, you know, you either get a level of success, or you could do it early on. I would say, like, learn from other people's mistakes. But like, if you can have a higher standard and get really clear on your values and criteria now, and like, choose your clients, because eventually when you have as you grow and become more successful, you can choose your clients and you can fire clients, because you don't need their money. And that's really cool when you get to the point where you can walk away from a $50K deal, because like, it's my peace of mind. It's priceless.
Right. It's not worth the energy.
It's not worth it. Like, actually, that's another thing too. Like, it's so interesting to see a lot of people, like, at the end of the day, like, if you're not having fun and enjoying what you're doing, why are you doing it? Life's too short.
100%.
That's one thing, one of our core values at Porch Light and Got Fixers is our culture and is the people. You know, like, one thing we all align with is, if you're not enjoying being here and enjoying the people you work with here, like, that's what we protect. Like, we want to make sure that that's like the standard, and then everything else follows. Because how crazy, we spend 70% of our time doing our career more than the people. We spend more time doing our career and our hobbies than we do spend time with our loved ones. So make sure that 70% of the time we're doing something is you're enjoying it. So for me, I try to protect it too. Like, I don't want to, you know, spend energy and time working with rude people.
Yeah, totally.
When there's plenty of good people who need our services. And again, that goes back to abundance mindset too. The scarcity mindset keeps us holding on to those terrible people, this client. Is sure, somebody will work with them, let them work with them. There's, again, other people who are going to be more enjoyable to work with, and you could probably make just as much, if not more, off those deals too.
100%. Talk to me about your guys', let's get into some business conversation. I hope the listeners are enjoying this, because I'm enjoying it. What's your guys' goal this year in terms of flips and all that stuff?
Yeah, so we want to do 18 flips, 18 wholesales, and 18 listings is our goal as a company. Ultimately, my personal goal is to exceed all those.
Nice.
But yeah, those are our goals right now.
18. Dude, I feel like you guys can do so many more than that. That's
yeah,
like
we're just
2.5 a month.
Doable. Yeah. We just, I mean, already we're on pace to kind of beat that, but ultimately we wanted to set them like doable. Yeah. Like SMART goals.
Oh, you said abundance mindset. Come on, buddy.
I know.
You got more in the tank.
I know. So we'll see. I'm very excited, and I think so too. That's why we have it, but ultimately we want to be able to show. I think a huge thing too is showing progress. Like, it's so cool to like psychology to just see us getting close to the numbers. So that's part of it as well. But yeah, anywho.
Good. I like that. And then your guys' main source, like your realtor relationships and cold calls, are you guys doing anything? Have you guys added anything else?
So our biggest thing is outbound cold calling. It still works. That's how I got started. And then we're doing agent relations, so agents who bring us opportunities and are those relationships. And then, we're doing like slowly building our inbound marketing, so like PPC, and then eventually, we'll do like mailers, and we want to get up there with our top competitors, TV commercials. So our goal is to, be one of the prominent, investors here in San Diego.
Nice, yeah, it's awesome. I had a meeting with someone who is retired now, but got started flipping when he was 18. He had a big company here doing 100+ deals, and it's funny, he's 36, I'm 35.
Wow.
He is basically semi-retired now, and like he doesn't flip houses anymore, but it's just crazy like what this industry can bring in terms of wealth and where you can take it. I don't know what my point behind that was, but I think 18 is, because you guys have somewhat of a big team, right? There's 5 acquisition.
No, we have 13 acquisition people.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's a huge team.
Yeah. Actually, well, that's including I would say 10. We have 10 specifically acquisitions people.
So I told you I coach with a real estate company for flips, and we hire based on production of each acquisitions person, and each acquisitions person should be bringing in 5 deals per month.
That's awesome.
So rule of thumb. So like for you, if you got 10 people, that's a lot of deals that you guys should be bringing in.
Right.
Theoretically.
Right. Theoretically. Yeah. We're still very new. So, so there's a lot of in the pipeline. I think we're going to get there, but just it being a slower sales cycle, we've already seen that. So like we were prospecting the last like 5 months, and then like I would say in the last month we signed 9 deals. So they're starting to trickle in.
I love that.
And then we'll start seeing that go. So I think we will be able to get to that.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. It'd be really, interesting to see.
I think you guys can probably do that many in the first and second quarter with that many people for sure. No doubt in my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that, Faith. Well, the thing too is like our guys are, they're also licensed realtors, so they're working that as well. So they're kind of like dispersed. Whereas like they're not
only
full-time acquisitions. So
gotcha.
That's where it's going to slow down a little bit, but ultimately, they all see the vision and the value of the acquisitions.
I love that. Yeah, my Madison, my acquisitions girl, she locked up 7 deals in January.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. All through like
a mixture. Yeah. Mixture of agent relationships, direct seller, all that stuff. But we've moved towards, still do cold calling and stuff, but I told you we do a lot of outbound, a lot of inbound marketing, which is warmer, and the cash conversion cycle is a lot faster.
Right.
So things like PPC and that stuff, like the one deal that we got that I just told you that story on, we locked it up same day.
Wow.
So it was a lead that came in through the website, literally signed contract 2 hours later.
Wow.
And so it's just interesting. So when you switch from, because cold call, as much as it does work, it is a slower cash conversion cycle, and you're probably like a 3-month lead time. So from like getting the lead to closing is probably like 90 days, and then obviously another 90 days before you get paid.
Right.
So it makes it harder. So like but it's more expensive to do the inbound stuff with direct mail and PPC and all those other things. So
yeah, I think what I read to statistic is like outbound now it's anywhere between 3 to 7 months conversion cycle, whereas inbound's 1 to 3.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of these industries going into inbound marketing because, like I said, the sales cycle is a lot faster, 1 in 3 months.
Right.
And being a newer team, we need the outbound to
100%
keep our expenses low and build those deals up. But then as we grow, now we're going to be pouring into our inbound marketing.
Right.
And then what's really cool is because we're doing so much outbound, I think by the time we really grow our inbound, we're just going to start seeing
100%.
All the outbound nurtures that we have,
plus
the inbound. And I think we're going to get to that point where we're doing 100 deals a month. 100 deals a year, which I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah, very easy to do. Once you have, I don't think it's very easy to do. In terms of flipping, I don't know that I want to get to that point to do for my peace of mind, unless I took myself completely out and like kind of had other people run it. I don't know that I would want the headache because there's so much liability. Talking to people who are retired from doing flips and all that stuff, it's like there's tons of liability. And, eventually, that's why I actually respect the wholesaling model. I don't love to do it, especially because we both get tons of agent leads. So I would prefer to close on those because they get the relists and all that stuff. But I admire the people who have big wholesaling operations because it's scalable very quickly. And in terms of profitability, it's almost the same thing in essence, if you can get it for where you need to. And the way that I look at it is a real estate commission because there's no realtors involved.
Right.
So, but it's just interesting how the scalability of a wholesaling operation versus flipping, because it does become very challenging mentally in terms of time of, your mental capacity of your time.
Right. Well, on that note, I think we're learning this too because, right now being more of a smaller, quote unquote, team, everybody wears many hats.
Right.
And yes, having like the flip side and then obviously the agent relations and then the dispo with the wholesaling, it is a lot. And one thing that we're learning right away is like, we need to like promote people quickly. And that's kind of a challenge too, is how do we get to the point where we can promote people quickly so that we know that we can trust them to really lead and grow that channel of business. And right away, we're seeing that we need a dispo manager. And obviously, our competitors have done a really good job of putting a dispo manager in place, and then they are now overseeing all the wholesalers. So, it's very interesting. But I think the best part about all this, it's doable.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what I love about, and if I could just, for those that are listening that maybe want to get into the game, whether it's real estate investing, flipping, wholesaling, I think what I love about real estate is that it's so doable. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. The simple fact that, I'll speak for myself, that I'm here doing it with our team means that anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Like, I am not special. I am not super smart. I don't have, like, a ton of money, all these things. It's just doing it, surrounding yourself with good people who have a similar vision.
Right.
And then collaborating, and then just, you can watch YouTube videos, you go books on this stuff. Like, it's not rocket science. You just, going back to what you said, we just got to make decisions and take action. And you'll learn from those decisions and actions. And then you keep repeating that until you get the results you want.
Absolutely.
So
I love that.
Yeah, it's really, it's just crazy. Because I used to be so scared too. Like, obviously, I left the bigger company and to then go do it in a not quote unquote my own, but partner with two other guys. And then we're doing it. But it's like, it's not rocket science. And I think just what's holding people back is their own mind. Oh, that's one more thing I wanted to say. And for those that are maybe like stuck or fearful or overthinking, it's kind of bittersweet thought. Like, there's so many people who are ignorant, but take more action. They get further along in life, or have more results, right? Or there's people with bad intentions, but yet they take more action, and you see them on social media. You see them like successful. But then there's a lot of good people with big hearts. I think it breaks my heart more than seeing good people with good intentions, but they're just too scared to take action. And it's interesting to see a lot of good people live mediocre or just not fulfilling their potential because they're just too afraid to take action or overthinking when there's a lot of not the best people taking action and getting the results. So like, I think about that, and I hope that just sparks fire in somebody who's listening to this to take action, because we need more of you, good people with good intentions, to take more action, be leaders, be business owners, because you guys are going to make an impact and make greater good and kind of cause that ripple effect. And, we need, it just breaks my heart. There's a lot of, because I used to be one of those people. And I'm now learning more and more to take action. I don't know, you said something that sparked that, but I just hope that people resonate with that and take action and just do the thing.
100%. And the other token of that, some of those people could just be lazy.
Right.
And not just scared.
Right, fair.
Yeah.
To that too, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously the scared ones absolutely should, because the lazy ones probably won't do it anyways.
And that goes back to, like, see, now we're going to get, sure, if you're truly, like, if people are lazy, great. But if you really, like, want something, it's like you just got to have, like, stronger reasons.
Yeah.
Like, if your why, one of my favorite books is The Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. It's like if you have a strong enough why, the how becomes easier. And for those that are maybe it's hard for you to like get up in the morning, or you don't have that thing that keeps you up at night that you're excited to work on, or makes you awake. You don't have strong enough and clear enough reasons for what you want in life.
Sure.
So like if you can get really clear and have compelling reasons, you'll wake up at 5 a.m. or you'll burn the midnight oil, like Jim Rohn would say. So I just challenge you to dive deeper and just ask yourself more questions until you get crystal clear on what you want, what's important to you, and then that'll get you going.
Yeah. You have to have a bigger purpose.
Exactly.
You have to. For a longer time when I was younger, like in my 18-year-old self, I would go to like Tom Ferry summits and things when I was a realtor, and they would always be like, what's your why? What's your why? What's your why? And I'm like, everyone else is writing down like kids and family and marriage and all this stuff. And I always could never find it. It took me the longest time. And still to this day, the simplest way I can say it is just bigger purpose and to serve others and to help at this point, because I can help. But I'm excited about the things that I'm doing, and I think that's where my purpose aligns with everything else. But like there's not one thing that I could say of what my true, like when people say their why, it's like my kids or whatever. To me, I don't have that. And so it's just a bigger purpose, and I have to like, I don't know if there's a way that I can just find it deeper maybe, but I don't have the laziness, and I'm not scared to do things, and I go in every day with like a fire in my stomach of excited to do things. So it's interesting because I think everyone finding a why is very challenging, I think, for a lot of people, and it may not be like a cut and dry answer. So like for me, again, me saying just a bigger purpose, that could be it, and you can have enough to push you forward. If it's not for someone else, you have to find it, and it has to be deeper.
Right. And I love what you said, and I think it's so true that one is it's going to be different for everybody, so don't compare.
Right.
Like, I think that's where a lot of people get hung up, too. Like, oh, like their why is so, like, thought-provoking and amazing. But ultimately, it's like, figure out what's important to you. Cut out all the noise, all the distraction, what mom says, dad says, society. What moves you is most important. And I think another thing, too, is, like, it's always evolving. We're evolving creatures. What's important to you right now, maybe in your 20s or your 30s, it's going to look different than what's important to you in your 30s and 40s.
Sure.
So I think it's also super important to check in with yourself on a yearly, I do it a yearly, quarterly, semi-annually, but you got to prioritize time to check in with yourself and have a conversation and say, hey, is this still important to me? Because one of the strongest and bravest things you can do is let go of old dreams and create new dreams, but that's scary for a lot of people. Or shed this old identity of yourself and then grow into a new identity. And those are all really hard things to do, but we have to do that consistently. We're evolving. We're not like fixed creatures. And things change, right? Like new people come into our life. Maybe you become a parent, you become a husband or a wife, and now you have different things that you have to reprioritize things. So like, I think that's where a lot of people kind of struggle with is like they're still holding on to their old dreams or their old identity, and because it's scary to go into the uncertainty and create a new identity. It's interesting. I do this thing called a clarity workshop. I'm actually doing it for the Porchlight team the next 3 Wednesdays, but ultimately it's to help people uncover their why, what's important to them. And that's one thing I emphasize is and really quickly, I want to know, curious to see what some of your whys are, but it's just helping them get clear on their why and what's important to them. And then I've done it for other people, so if that's something people want to do, I'm happy to do that one day for maybe like for your office, or if we could do like a meetup on that, it'd be really cool, because it's mind-blowing. One thing I'll say too is I love talking to people. I used to live in a van, and I used to give away free coffee to people. And then in my van, I attracted a lot of people, strangers, and I would just offer them coffee, and I just sit down and I was always curious about people's stories. And at this time too, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I was learning what they do, why they do things, so then maybe I would learn and get more insights on where do I want to go in life.
Right.
And what was really interesting is, as I ask people, one of my favorite questions is, what are your dreams and goals? And 80% of people, I would say, said, I don't know. I don't know. And I thought that was very interesting. How crazy that a lot of people don't know what they want. Mm-hmm. They don't know where they want to go. Mm-hmm. And then same, I didn't know what I wanted. So then every year I have a word of the year. Mm-hmm. And it was 4 or 5 years ago, my word was clarity. Mm-hmm. So I literally just bought books, like podcasts, and I just started like getting more insights on clarity. And that, similar thought to you, like, how do some people know their why and what they want? And I have no idea what I want or what my purpose in life is. And through that, I developed the Clarity Workshop. I did it with my 2 best friends. They got a lot of value insights out of that. I started Bueno Bueno. Do you remember during COVID, what was that one app where people could jump in a room? Do you remember that app? I'm blanking on this app that was very popular in COVID. And they had like breakout rooms or rooms where you can...
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. You know which one we were talking about? It was the app where it was like that app that came out where people would like do almost like threads.
Yeah.
Clubhouse.
Yeah. So we had our own Bueno Clubhouse. And all I did was facilitate questions and share people's insights and help them get clarity. Did that for a whole year, different topics. Mm-hmm. And my point is, like that's such a interesting topic. But now that I've got a better understanding of it, I think it's super important that people take time to have conversations with themselves. Like Tony Robbins, I think one of the greatest quotes is, your quality of life is directly correlated with the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people aren't asking themselves enough quality questions to dive deeper, understand. But yeah, I'll pause there. But I'm curious for you, like, I know you said bigger purpose, but like, do you have any more specific whys of what gets you going or what lights you up?
Yeah.
Why you're doing what you're doing?
So one big thing that clicked with me is when I got engaged to find out now I wasn't just working for myself anymore. I was working for my bigger purpose. Yeah. When I hired Madison, who's my acquisitions girl, she was my assistant and molded her into the sales role. And now she's crushing it. Like she had her biggest month in January, closing month in January. And, my goal is to get her to make $200,000 this year. And so that is my bigger purpose. Being able to do things like that is what excites me. Like I think the business in terms of revenue and all those things, to me, it's a video game. I'm playing a video game and we're looking at the scoreboard, but like money coming in and all the other stuff, like of course I care, but like it doesn't move me in a fulfilled way. The other stuff that comes with that of growing something with other people is what moves me. Mm-hmm. So that's where, when I'm saying bigger purpose, of course it's like, generational wealth and not have to, work and grind it out for the rest of my life and have other things, and where, I can get to a point where in my 40s where maybe I can fund investors deals instead of doing deals, right? Where it just becomes different. I travel more, right? I think big thing when I started making really good money a few years ago, freedom to be able to say no to certain things of, clients that, betrayed my time and took too much of my energy, and just be more selective, to be able to go and travel, right? To be able to go take a month off if I wanted to, or go do whatever I wanted to do. So really it's all of that. Mm-hmm. And there's not one thing that I could say that drives me. It's just all of it put together that excites me. Because with Madison and I, it's like her and I talk every day, right? And I love seeing her excited when we get new deals. And I love to see her excited, like put it in our CRM and put projected profit and her have it and know like what her potential revenue will be in the next few months. Mm-hmm. That to me is exciting, right? So... and hopefully I can continue, because we definitely are getting to the point where we're breaking some things. So we need to now implement probably a new person to come on the team, probably a new couple people to come on the team. So then it's just going to be another excitement of like being able to have and to train and have other people that I can also, that can either look up to me, which it's a weird thing to say, but it's not an ego thing because they do, and try to help them. If I can help her buy her first house and invest in a deal, whatever it is, that kind of stuff is what moves me now.
Yeah, contribution.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like one, a freedom option and choice for your personal life, which is amazing. Yeah. And then, obviously being a servant leader, it sounds like it really fulfills you. And then it's just really cool, contribution. Mm-hmm. And then I think, too, like, again, Tony Robbins, I listened to a lot of these great people, and they've obviously studied billions of people and, what ultimately brings fulfillment. It's purpose outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. I think that purpose has to be something bigger than ourselves. Mm-hmm. You've heard that a lot. It's very cliche. Mm-hmm. But it usually does revolve around other people or helping a bigger cause, whatever that is, whatever's important to you.
Right.
And so I think that's amazing. And then you said something else, which, Tony Robbins also talks about this, and I agree. It's like there's two things there's like 6 human needs, but there's 2 things that truly bring fulfillment. Mm-hmm. And one is contribution. Mm-hmm. So what doesn't mean money, but it could be coaching people, building people up, just helping those around you. Mm-hmm. Then the second thing is growth, progress.
Right.
As humans, again, we're always evolving. And it's like if we're not learning and growing, like we're dying. Mm-hmm. So we constantly have to be moving and growing. Like we get fulfilled when we're making progress. And Jim Rohn says it too. It's like it's not the goal, but it's who you become.
Sure.
While you're pursuing that goal.
Right.
It's like it's sure you want to start a business, but more importantly, it's who you become as you starting that business. Right. We become better leaders, or we can have such an influence on these other people. Like now it's actually a lot. I'm sure you probably feel the same way, but like to be a leader and you have a team relying on you to make good decisions to move the company in an upward direction, so like they can earn money and help. That's a lot of weight.
It's pressure.
That's a lot of pressure and responsibility. I think most people don't think about when they want to become an entrepreneur or want to become a business leader. Is it comes with a lot of weight and responsibility.
It does.
And because it's not just you anymore, you have to be concerned about other people's livelihoods as well.
Yeah.
And it's just, but for me, like, and similar to you, it sounds like I love that challenge.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that. I enjoy contributing and sharing best practices so that one day they can do the same things that we're doing.
Did you ever feel like with doing that you had like imposter syndrome at all?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting because because it all happens so fast.
It does,
too.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, just a year ago, 2 years ago, I was in their position, just hitting the phones, seeking, opportunities, negotiating contracts, going to appointments, cold calling, like all that jazz. And then to now be the person who's one of the leaders, it's an interesting thought. And I think, just to be like honest, sometimes like wow, yeah, like it's crazy to be in this position, and I still feel like I have so much to learn. I have so much to grow and just like any human, I have doubt and fears and but at the end of the day too, I understand that, and I'm just like, just do what's required.
Yep.
Keep learning. And I think one thing I've learned too now is, one, like have trust in people. And then 2, I'm getting better at asking for help. So like one of my favorite things we do as a team is we'll get together and I just ask for feedback. I'm like, hey, I can't do this alone. What's working and what's not working? And often they will reveal where the bottleneck in the system is. And then, great, now I know what to work on. So
right.
I think, too, as a leader, one thing that's helped me is, like, one of my biggest responsibility is to make sure that they have everything they need to be successful.
Right.
And then, 2, whatever kinks in the systems that is hindering them from being successful, that I solve that so that they can be successful. And so it's just really cool and then like, I don't need to figure out that stuff myself. I could just ask them questions, and then we'll have brainstorm meetings where we just like, okay, what's worked the last month, 2 months, and how can we do better?
Sure.
And any other ideas, because often, I really get that from Ray Dalio. He's been really good about being transparent and then ultimately hearing the team out. Because sometimes there'll be many times too where they come up with a great idea, and I'm like, we implement, like, that was their idea. I didn't come up with that.
Right.
And a lot of the things that we're implementing comes from the team. So it's just so cool to see them kind of like step up and come up with great ideas that we implement, and then it's just like, already. And then I think too it's super important too because they feel like they are a part of it, and they're contributing.
Right.
It goes back to that fulfillment. They're contributing too,
right?
Which is really cool, and then we're all making progress together.
I love that. Dude, we could probably keep going for forever.
I know.
I think we're probably like an hour and something in. Any closing thoughts? Any passion projects you're working on?
That's a good question. Closing thoughts. Well, one, I think for those that are listening, like if you have any questions, like don't, feel free to reach out, like ask questions. I think be curious. I think for those that actually don't know what their passion is or what their purpose is, I would say just follow your curiosity. I think the curiosity is like the spark of like learning and growth. So if you don't know where to go, just start. Like, what is your curiosity leading you to? What are you curious about? You're going to learn a lot more and be more hungry, and you follow that curiosity.
Right.
And so that's kind of like one of my closing thoughts. Just follow what you're curious and seek understanding. I think a lot of people, when they have a challenge or an obstacle or doubt, they just give up and stop trying.
Yep.
Whereas if I can say anything is go seek understanding, go seek knowledge in that thing. Because I think like sadness, I love what Alex Ramosi says, that like sadness is a perceive of lack of options. You don't think that you have enough options to grow or get a better life. When in reality, it's just lack of information, lack of knowledge. You can kind of break some of the quote unquote sadness if you just go seek understanding and find knowledge and then see that, there's actually options out there for me. And then you could get excited again. I have options. I'm not stuck, trapped in this thing. And the reason why people, I think, feel stuck or trapped is because they don't go seek out and be open-minded to that there's actually more options out there. So go be curious, go find more options so you get more excited. And then, so anyhow, that's one of my closing thoughts. And passion projects, well, my first property did really well, and I don't think we touched too much about that, but...
We really haven't talked anything about business, which is nice, though.
Yeah, it's really nice. But it's now to a point where it did really well, and it's actually appreciated quite a bit, so I'm actually in the process of pulling out a HELOC. That way I can go buy my next house hack.
Nice.
So that's kind of something I'm really working on. And then actually funny that you say not talking about business. I feel like all I do is like business and work and productivity. Maybe we talked about this last time. But I'm trying to be more mindful of community and also having fun. I tell my guys that it's really hard for me to, one of my friends asked me the other day, she's like, what do you need help with? And I'm like, that's an interesting question. Rarely do people ask me what I need help with, because I'm usually the one asking, how can I help you? And I was like, I need help with fun. So like, if you ever come up with fun things to do, like just invite me.
Yeah.
Because I can, if I don't have anything fun to do, I immediately go to productivity.
Right.
How can I read? How can I reflect? How can I, move the company forward?
Right.
And I just think about career. But I know like life is short and fun is super important.
It is.
It's like, why? What's the point?
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. It's like decompression and all that, de-stressor. Yeah.
But how about you? I'm curious.
In terms of passion projects?
And closing thoughts.
One, this was a fantastic episode. I feel like the insight on this, hopefully people get a ton of value from this. Passion projects, not really. I mean, right now in terms of like business stuff, of course, I want to keep growing and see where that goes. I definitely think I'm going through like some mental hurdles, but with going into that, like with the abundance mindset, so it's like I feel like it's almost like mental hurdles to go through a breakthrough. But yeah, nothing really in terms of passion projects. I'm enjoying talking to people and doing stuff like this. This is like my passion project. Like the business stuff is obviously we do all the time, but this is my passion project, the podcast, being able to talk to other people. So I enjoy doing this. So yeah.
Okay. And actually I do have one more closing thought. It's probably my favorite question. My team kind of gets, they laugh or maybe annoyed is not the right word, but my favorite question for those that did listen all the way through this podcast, if you could just, wherever this is posted, whether YouTube, social media, all I ask is, what was your biggest takeaway from this conversation? That would bring me a lot of fulfillment. I'm sure it would bring Josh a lot of fulfillment. What was your biggest takeaway? I'm always so curious what people take, and it's just so cool how people take different things from the same conversation depending on where they're at in their life. And often I feel like you got to be ready to hear certain things. So I'm just curious what your biggest takeaway was. It'd be really fun to read the comments and get that info.
Yeah, DM us,
Yeah.
both of us, and let us know, because that means that you listened to this whole thing, and we appreciate it. So thanks, everyone, for watching. We truly appreciate you. I hope you got a ton of value out of this this episode with Manny. Obviously, you can follow us on both social medias below, and we will see you in the next episode.